Okay, so anyway, welcome to class, everyone. I'm very, very excited. I don't know how you guys felt about last semester, but it was kind of hard not getting to meet together, just because I don't know, feels disconnected and almost like, why are we doing this? But I'm hoping this will be helpful for everyone. So, with that being said, please stop me at any point with questions, or if you feel more comfortable, you can ask questions in the chat. Our UTF Ben is here. He won't always be here. He'll be here when he can, and if you have questions, you can drop them in the chat, and he will answer them. Or if that doesn't happen, make sure I don't miss anything. Um, but you're always welcome to stop me if something's unclear or you need more information. So kind of how I'm envisioning this working out is I'll give you some like practice techniques and how to play through these skills. And if you find these meetings helpful, come all the time. If they're not helpful to you or only on sometimes, it's not mandatory. Join us when you want, but I'm happy to have so many of you here today. I suggest if you have a piano nearby or a keyboard that you play along with me while we practice. All of you should be on mute unless you have a question. So you trying to play along with me is not going to disturb anyone else, and it will also help you know what you need more help with. Um, okay. I think that's everything I wanted to say before we started. Does anybody have any questions that have not been answered or about the past week or future weeks? Anything before I jump into the materials? Okay, cool. Well, if you have any, just stop me. So I'm just going to switch to my top camera. I'm going to make this the main view. Okay, so this week in Piano Marvel, the focus is going to be on scales, harmonic minor scales. We did some major scales last semester, and I could only tell how you guys were doing based off of your assignments. I didn't know how much you understood or how comfortable you felt, just because I never got the chance to get to know many of you, and many of you are new to my class this semester. So I'm just going to kind of assume that everybody's in the same boat and feels less familiar with what we're doing. So what I want to start with is just some tricks to understanding the fingering. So just so you know, I believe we're doing A, E, okay, what are we doing? A, E, G, and D and C minor? I don't know. Whatever we're doing, they all have the same fingerings, so I want to talk about those first. Um, all of these fingerings that we're looking at are going to be the same for these scales. And if you remember the fingerings for the major scales, they will be the same for the minor scales, with just a couple of exceptions. But how that works is if we're starting with A minor, oh goodness, if we're starting with an A minor scale, the fingering is going to be the same as A major because they're parallel, minor and major, with parallel meaning they have the same tonic. So if you already know how to play an A major scale fingering wise, then you already know how to play a minor scale because parallel major and minor have the same fingering almost always. There are a couple that are more comfortable if you change. But just to review, so both of these, their fingering for the right hand is going to be 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5. So 5 is what we call like a substitute, because if you continue the scale, we won't actually use 5. 5 is just the beginning or ending of the scale, depending which hand you're using. So I put 5 in parentheses because we are going to do 2 octaves. That means instead of 5, we'll repeat this pattern. And I suggest thinking in these groups where you have 3 that you play together and 4. And by 3 and 4, I mean you play 3 fingers, then you play 4 fingers, with just a little crossover or underneath in between. That's the way I think of it. It's going to be the same deal for your left hand, except we will start with 5 in parentheses again because it's like a substitute, starting with a group of 4 notes this time, and then a group of, oh gosh, that's an awful looking 2, and then a group of 3 notes. So my honest to goodness advice to you is just memorize these, but this is a pattern that just hopefully will make it easier if you're thinking 3, 4, 3, 4. One way you can practice this to make this a little bit easier, you probably can't see my hands right now, but I'll just leave the screen up anyway, and you can just listen to what I do. I'm going to do C major just for right now. If anybody wants to play it with me, C major has no sharps or flats. So the way I would practice this is practice a group of 3 with my right hand. So playing 3 notes with my right hand, and then picking it up and playing a group of 4 where my right hand left off. That means my thumb is on F. And then because we are doing 2 octaves, pick this up again, do a group of 3 and a group of 4. So I'm going to get rid of the screen for a second, and I'll show you what that looks like. So C major, 3 notes, 4 notes, 3 notes, 4 notes, and then we end with our pinky. And then you can play this in reverse. So 4, 3, 4, and then 3. So that's one way you can think about this. I just call this blocked practice because you're taking all these notes and playing them at the same time. And then after you feel comfortable knowing where these groups of 3 and 4 are, then you can switch to playing individual notes. So group of 3, group of 4, and then 3, then 4, and then end with finger number 5. And then coming back down, the groups reverse, 4, 3, 4, 3. With your left hand, it's the same concept, except for starting backwards because our hands are mirror images. You'll start with finger number 5, and then a group of 4, then 3, then 4, then 3, and then you reverse on the way back down. So this is something, if you work in patterns, which I think we all do to some extent as musicians, something that can help with this. I have good news for you, hopefully. If you do not feel comfortable playing scales or arpeggios, all of these you can play. So the assignment is to play hands together, but I'm going to say you can do hands separate. So they're written this way right on top of each other, but you can do just one hand at a time for every scale and arpeggio exercise. So if this is new to you, I don't want to throw on the extra burden of playing scales hands together. If this is not new to you and you want to challenge or however, do what's comfortable for you. So the minimum that I require is that you play these each hand separately, and you can even slow down the metronome to anything. Honestly, what I want to hear is solid notes. So if you're playing solid notes at 60 BPM, that's great. I'll take it. Okay, so I want to play through this. Actually, I don't want to play through this. Not yet. So minor scales, there are 3 different kinds of minor scales. I don't know if this is familiar to all of you, but the kind we're playing are harmonic minor scales. So in harmonic minor scales, notice in A minor, there's nothing in the key signature, but there is a G sharp on the 7th note. That's what makes this harmonic. So the 7th note of the scale is raised half a step. So if you know your natural minor scales, you can raise that 7th note to make it harmonic. But the thing is that there are ways to memorize this, and I think you should have these memorized, but you also have every single note in front of you. So I'm going to let you as individuals work through this the way it works for you. And then if you need extra help or have questions, then reach out to me and, we can meet together. So for now, just so that we all get a chance to play, if you have a keyboard and you want to, we will play through this. So I'm going to play hands together. If you want to do that with me, you can. If you're not ready for that, pick one hand, but see if you can follow these groups of threes and fours. And you can kind of see how they're grouped because either you end with a three or a four, or you can't really see it because this is in the way. You either start with a three or a four. That's how you can see these groups. But more practice, you'll know these pretty well. Okay, here we go. A harmonic minor. Oh, wait. Hold on. I cannot hear this. I need to figure out how I can hear this. I forget there's all these little weird things. Okay, this should be good. Okay, we'll try again.
1, 2, set, go.
So that was at 90, metronome marking 90. This is originally set at 110, which is a little fast for just learning the scales. So if you're playing with Piano Marvel, slow down to a tempo that's comfortable. If you're playing without Piano Marvel, you do not have to use a metronome. Just make sure your rhythm is really steady. Okay, if anyone hasn't done video 1 yet for any reason and you've contacted me about that, you are welcome to play hand separate for all scales and arpeggios. This will be the same for all of this unless I ask you specifically to do hands together. I don't know why I would do that, but I'm just going to put that there just in case. Okay, so that is scales stuff. So arpeggios. The way that I find arpeggios easiest to practice is in this blocking thing that we talked about before. So I'm going to get rid of this. If you want to pull up Piano Marvel for yourself, go ahead and do that. But basically what you're doing when you play an arpeggio is you're repeating a chord over and over again. So if we're doing A minor, we're going to repeat an A minor chord. So A, C, and E twice in this case because we're doing 2 octaves. So my finger numbers I'm using for my right hand are 1, 2, 3. So I play that, and then I play the exact same chord, just moved up an octave. So to see that again, and then you end with your pinky on the top. And I would suggest not trying to reach all of this together, but just kind of keeping your hand loosely in the shape that it was to play this A minor chord. Okay, so if we're blocking this whole thing, it looks like this. So A minor chord, A minor chord, A by itself, and then we come back down and back down again. Okay, so before we play this the way it's written, I want to talk a little bit about chords and inversions. So generally whenever you play right hand arpeggios, the shape that you're repeating is a root position chord. That means all the notes are a third apart. So that's the shape you repeat. In your left hand, it's different. So your left hand is repeating an A minor chord, but it's in a different inversion. So it's going to be C, E, and A. So if you're practicing this blocked way, if you're practicing arpeggios in blocks, this is the way I would suggest you do it. It's finger number 5, blocked chord, keep that exact same shape in your hand, pick it up, play an octave higher, bring it back down, and then end with 5. So when you break this all down, we still have the same shapes that we were doing before. We're just playing one note at a time. A couple things to be careful of. If you've ever taken piano lessons, you've probably heard this before. But whenever you're doing crosses, you don't want to get any of this like elbow sticking up in the air. That causes tension. It can cause injury if you do it. And it's also not very helpful. It gets in your way more than anything. So what I think the best thing to do is when you're ready to cross, so we're going underneath, is I'm tucking my thumb underneath until it gets about to my 4th finger. That's how far I can reach my thumb without like contorting my hand. So underneath, my thumb is tucking, and then once I can't reach anymore, I let go of the notes to get to the next one. So there's a small gap in there. Don't worry about making every single note connected. That's better right now than causing injury. So, okay, so just so you can see what this whole thing looks like, we have 1, 2, 3, repeat the shape, 5, and then reverse it. Left hand, remember, the shape we repeat is this one. You've got a third on the bottom and a fourth on top. So starting with pinky, and then chord, and in chord again, and back down. Again, in Piano Marvel, slow this down to a tempo that's comfortable for you and play hands separate if that's what works better for you. One thing I want to point out is all the fingerings are on here. Again, if you've taken piano lessons, you've probably been told you can use finger number 3 or finger number 4 on this second note of the arpeggio for your left hand, but technically the rule is to use finger number 4, and if you want to know the rule, you can listen. If you don't, just ignore me for a second. But the rule is when you have two notes, or when you're playing an interval of a third with the bottom part or the top part of your hand. So this is the rule of pinky to the next finger. If you're only skipping over one white key, you'll use finger number 4. If you're skipping over 2 white keys, for example, if you're going from a black key to a white key and you skip over 2 white keys, use finger number 3. So if you want to know, that's the rule. But just watch your fingerings in Piano Marvel and I think it will be fine. So just so we all get a little bit of practice, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to slow down all of these scales and arpeggios, and I'm just going to play through them. So this can be a time you can count as practicing for later if you want, but it's a good time just to get a chance to play, and then if you have questions at the end, then you'll kind of know what kind of questions to ask. So I'm just going to play through these hands together, all the scales and arpeggios that we have for this exercise. I want to make it quick in case any of you want to get on to the next part and don't need this. So here we go, A minor arpeggio.
1, set, go.
Okay, to continue, we're doing E harmonic minor scale. Watch out for your key signature. There's an F sharp in the key signature, and then there's also a raised leading tone. That 7th note is sharp. Same fingering as E minor, or sorry, E major. Here we go.
1, 2, set, go.
Okay, continuing on, E minor arpeggio. Just so you know, I am doing my metronome set at 85 for all of these, just to keep it consistent. So I've slowed all of them down from the original. Okay, E minor arpeggio, no black keys that we play.
1, set, go.
Okay, next we're doing D minor scale. This is one of my favorite scales just because I like the way it feels when I play it. Just so you know. Okay, D minor scale. Here we go.
1, 2, set, go. set, go.
And my goodness, there are so many of these. Okay, hopefully you all got a chance to play along with these with me. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit just to give us a chance to look at some other things. Um, and then we can come back to these at the end if people want to do more of these together. So if you have your Piano Marvel open, I'm skipping to page 202. I will also share my screen for a minute. Okay, so if any of you had the chance to watch the video I made, I I have to apologize. I just kind of was winging it the whole time. So I think I said stuff, and I don't know if I did for sure. So if I'm repeating myself, just know that it's because I don't know what I said. So whenever you're playing a piece of music, I'm sure all of you have done this or will do this at some point on your own instrument. But something that makes it really helpful to know the music for performance and memory, but also just to learn, is to look for patterns and sequences and those kind of things that make reading easier instead of reading individual notes. So just to walk you through this, I'll point out a few things that I noticed that I would find helpful for myself. So the first thing is there's nothing in the key signature, which tells me this is C major or A minor. Does anyone know what key this is based off of your knowledge of how keys work? You can unmute or say in the chat, or if nobody says anything, I will just tell you. But what we're looking for is this key C major or A minor? Okay, sounds pretty quiet out there. So the things that I look for when trying to decide if we're playing in a major or minor key is what you're starting on. So if it's a chord, if it's a single note. Looking at this implies A minor. It's missing a note, so it's basically implied. I also check the end. We're ending with like this A minor-ish figure. It sounds pretty minor. Something else you can look for is the seventh note of the scale being sharp. So if we are in A minor, that means G would be sharp. And here we have some G sharps. So that's a pretty good indication this is A minor without actually playing it. And it is A minor. It's not just, I know from experience because I did play it. Another thing I would look for is the meter. So this is 2/4, and we have a lot of 16th notes, which means it's pretty fast. So if you wanted to sit down and just sight read through this, you would want to take into consideration that 16th notes is your smallest division, so you don't want to go faster than you can play. Okay, so looking for patterns. Does anyone see any patterns, scales, chords, other figures that you would like to share with the class? Anything you want to point out? Okay, so Sadie says there's a lot of small 16th groups, which there totally are. There's so many. So if we just break this down and take a look at 16th notes, she also says they're in similar spots. So if we're looking for just these 16th notes, um, just looking at this without even knowing the notes, I'm noticing right away that these are descending and we're not skipping ever over any notes. Similarly here, um, like Sadie said, these are in similar spots. They're in the exact same spot in this case. And we're just going up and back down, up and back down. Notice it's hard to do on here. I'm trying to make this viewable for everyone. But this and this are similar, if not exactly the same, based on the contour or the shape. So descending. Here again are some more 16th notes. Ascending, ascending. This goes up and down similarly to this. So watching for these kind of things can be really helpful. If we switch gears for a second and take a look at non-16th notes, you're going to see similar patterns. So we start with a third, we play more thirds, and 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 then we have something not a third. Okay, so now that we have this general idea, looking more closely at these thirds, first two measures are the same. The next one moves up, same shape, but in a different place. And then those are all the same. And then again, we move up. So even if you don't know these notes right away, looking at them, if you follow the shape from here to here to here, that will make it easier. Because honestly, I'm not sitting here thinking, okay, I know that's C, but what is this note? You know, I'm just looking at their shape. Okay, to give you just a little bit more information, building off of what Sadie said, these 16th notes are essentially an A minor scale, an A natural minor scale. Natural because there's not a G sharp in there. So that makes this easier for me to play because I know I have an A, I leap up an octave, and then I play an A minor scale, which I've had practice doing. That makes it easier for me. This, if I know I play it twice, that makes it easier for me. Another A minor scale, another A minor scale. We played this on the first line. So you see what I'm getting at about patterns? There are so many patterns, but the important thing is to not assume that every pattern is the same. And so take a second to look closely. I'll give you an example. When I was playing this, I was completely taken by surprise because I played an A minor scale like 4 times, and then suddenly I was playing a C major scale. So here we have the same shape, exactly the same as the A minor scale, but this time it's C major. So watching for that will be helpful. This is the same as the first line, just move to a different position. And then we're back to A minor. Something else that's helpful with knowing patterns is I think, without being able to see all of this at once, I think if you learn line 1, the end of line 2, and this one, starting on measure 17, if you learn those 3 lines, then you know how to play this whole thing because it just repeats over and over and over again. So this is a way to streamline your practicing, make it a little bit easier for you, and just, yeah, anything that makes this easier for ourselves is great. I played through this, it's kind of fast, so I would definitely say slow it down when you test or when you're just practicing, whatever. If you want to speed it up, whatever your goals are. Okay, I will play through this. You can play along with me with one hand, both hands, or you can just follow along with the music. But I'm going to get rid of my screen. Okay, so here we go, page 202. I'm doing this at 7D.
Set, go.
Watch your finger numbers. So just repeating again. C major, back to A minor, C major, A minor. So now that you've heard this, you probably noticed that, yeah, there are a ton of things that are just repeated over and over again. Okay, I'm going to keep going. If you have questions, stop me, or if you want to wait until the end, just write them down, or just remember them in your head. Okay, this is our last page. So this is improv from chord symbols. So we did a little bit of improvisation last semester. The cool thing about improv is there are rules, but within the rules, you basically get to do whatever you want. So the rules, you need to play in the time signature. So if it's 3/4, then you need to make sure that we're hearing 3 beats in a measure and not anything else. This is easier to do when you're playing along with this. The main thing is when you change the chords. It's not really what you play in your right hand, it's when you're changing the chords in your left hand. Okay, so to look at these chords first, or let's just start with the bass line. So basically what we're doing, there's a pattern here. You start on a note, you move down a fourth, you move up a third. Oh, sorry, I said that wrong. You start on A, move down a fifth, move up a fourth, move down a fifth, move up a fourth, move down a fifth, move up a fourth, move down a fifth. So as soon as I realized that this was so much easier for me to play. Granted, I was trying to read the chord symbols and play at the same time, but just knowing it just makes it easier to play. You don't even have to look at what you're doing. What you're playing in your left hand are the roots of all of these chords. So the easiest way, I just kind of gave that away. If you didn't know, you could go through and compare each one, but now you know. You're playing the roots of all these chords, which means if this is a minor chord, it's going to be A minor. This is a minor chord, so it'll be D minor. So D is the note we're playing, and it's a minor chord. And then G major, I know it's major because these are capital. And then C major because these are capital. And then F major because this is capital. And then B minor because these are lowercase. And then E minor because these are capital. And then A minor, or sorry, E minor because it's lowercase, and A minor because it's lowercase. Now, the reason this matters is when you're improvising, if you're an experienced improviser, do whatever you want. If this is something new to you that you don't have much experience with, I would say start with small steps. And what I mean is the first time I played this, I literally was playing A minor chord, D minor chord, G major, C major, F major, B minor, E minor, and then A minor. That's literally all I did, just so I could get familiar with the chords. Oh, I don't like that. I want that to be major, but it says to play minor, so we'll do minor. And then after that, you can start getting creative. Use the same 3 notes, but mix them up. So maybe however you want to do it. It doesn't have to be really fancy, but I would say if this is new to you, stick with playing only chords, only notes that are in each of these chords. I'm not going to practice this with you just because I don't think it's really helpful because we won't play the same thing. But you got an example of how I would do this working through each thing. So we went over scales, we went over your piece that you're playing and improvisation and arpeggios. That's everything that you're working on this week. So now that we've been through that, does anyone have questions, just general questions that would be helpful for yourself and also the class? Okay, nobody has questions for everybody. So what I'm thinking I'll do now is I will end this meeting. If any of you want to stay and ask individual questions afterwards, please do that. Or if you want to meet later, send me an email, or if you want to practice something together now, whatever. But what I'll do is I'll end the meeting and we'll turn it into individual help, and then I'll just make notes for other people for them to use. So thank you for being here. I appreciate it, and I'll just take questions for the rest of the time. Okay, so Sadie, about playing four-part pieces. Well, it's up to you, whatever you can do. I think the way the pieces are set up is you only see one of the parts at a time, but if you see multiple parts and you want to play multiple parts, you can do that. Otherwise, I would say just play whatever it is for each page. Does that answer your question? Okay. Okay. So yeah, I think the Johnny Cash that was on video one, that was the case. I can't remember if you could see multiple um, lines. Okay, so I'll stop the recording, but I'll keep the meeting open for anyone who has more questions. Thanks for being here, guys.